Maddow's guest during this interview gives some insight, as far as I'm aware. She gives some insight into the degradation of U.S. democracy and what that will actually mean around the world. The conversation that I think would be good to have, and I'm glad Rachel Maddow is having it. Whoops. Is having it via this guest. I'm sorry I don't remember her name, but I tell you who does. That's Rachel Maddow.
Linda Thomas-Greenfield. She is the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. This is the week of the United Nations General Assembly. Along with President Biden, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is going to be speaking with the UN General Assembly this week. I think they're both speaking tomorrow.
I know the president is speaking tomorrow.
I also expect that President Biden and President Zelensky will meet and continue their talks in person on this trip. I have to ask you about something that I realize is a thorny sort of thing. Which is that one of the things we've learned in the news in the past week or so is that as America is supporting Ukraine in its war to defend itself against Russia, a single American citizen has business interests of such a type that he has been able, as an individual, to make decisions to constrain Ukraine's military from carrying out operations against Russia. And I'm talking, of course, about Elon Musk. I'm sure this is not an unprecedented thing in American history, but in Mr. Musk's case, we've got somebody who is an American businessman who effectively has foreign policy sway on his own and who, for whatever reason, has effectively decided to conduct competing and, I would say, oppositional foreign policy to the United States, a country of which he is a citizen. Who does President Zelensky come to complain about that? I mean, you are the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, but Mr. Musk appears to be competing with his own country in terms of what his foreign policy is, and he has the technological resources to do it in a materially significant way.
You know, I would assume that President Zelensky will raise that with the United States. And having served as an ambassador overseas and served here, I do have countries come to me to complain sometimes about the actions of an American company in their country. And we do try to address those issues when they're brought to our attention. So
Wow, what a non-answer. Sometimes people complain to me, and then we try to address those issues. Oh, say, can you... What the hell? I mean, look, we have to... we're going to have another round of glad this is on TV when they start using the word oligarch more often. What happens when you have one rich business person in a country dictating that country's foreign policy? That's an oligarch. What's the answer? It's something neoliberals are going to be real uncomfortable with, and do you see that streak of gray? I guess it's a streak of white amongst the gray in her hair. That should tell you she has been in this game for a while. Sometimes that's very good. Other times that means she cut her teeth amongst neoliberals. She is comfortable operating amongst them, and she sees them as the way to hold on to power. She is not going to say, well, he's an oligarch, and the problem is we need to get rid of oligarchs. We should not have anyone with that amount of power. You and I, theoretically, are taxpayers. When we pay our taxes, sometimes billions of them are stolen from the United States. I shouldn't say stolen because it's legal. They're taken from the United States and they're given to people like Elon Musk in the form of a giant tax break or windfall or whatever. Anytime Elon Musk gambles with his money and loses, the United States rushes in and says, oh, no, we can't let that happen. He's too big to fail. We got to bail him out because jobs are on the line here. Yachts are on the line, for God's sake. His kids might not be able to go to private school on the moon. And because our power is stolen from us and given to Musk, that gives him the ability to do things like the Starlink program, which he is allowed complete control over, and he can choose whether or not to help in Ukraine. And if we're saying that we're deferring to a independent businessman to provide Ukraine with communications, but we put no restrictions on what that businessman can do because we are afraid of the power of the oligarch, then, folks, we are in an oligarchy. Funny enough, for those of you that don't understand why Ukraine being allowed to exist benefits everybody else, let me first of all remind us all that they could offer us nothing and they would still have a right to exist, to not be invaded by imperialist scum, and we should still, even if they were of no use to us whatsoever, we should still full-throatedly and with teeth and nails, if necessary, defend them against that imperialist scum. That said, understand that Ukraine wrote laws that did away with oligarchs, and we should copy those laws. Literally copy their work. Write it down ourselves. They have good laws for that. We did a segment on it. I recommend you check that out. But it's how we can get rid of oligarchs. Pretty simple laws. All it requires that we do is define what an oligarch is. Pretty easy to do. It's basically somebody that makes enough money within a country that they can unduly affect how the politics of that country work, and then make it illegal for that person with that amount of money to do those things that affect politics in that country. It's that simple. You can still be rich. You can still be filthy rich. You just can't be an oligarch. Because your wealth does not get to lessen the people's voice in politics. That is why Ukraine is of use to us. Also, they make a hell of a lot of food that we eat. In other words, if you're a farmer that fell for Russian propaganda and you think that Ukraine is sufficiently othered, I will remind you they are the farmers of Europe. They do for the world what you do for the United States.
Assume if President Zelensky has a complaint, he will bring that to us if he hasn't already. He hasn't brought it to me.
With the kind of technology that we're talking about here, this Starlink technology linked to Mr. Musk's SpaceX company, no.
We can't go beyond that. I assume that Mr. Musk will tell us if he has a complaint. If he doesn't like me putting this gun against his temple, I'm sure he'll look me in the eyes and say, I don't like that gun against my temple. You remember when Trump made Zelensky do a press conference with him and they were sitting in front of cameras and Zelensky was wide-eyed saying like, yep, Trump is great. I love Trump. For sure. He debased himself like that to protect his people. Similarly, he might not choose to step on the toes of an American oligarch because he's had a hell of a time with Ukrainian oligarchs already. He understands their power, and he understands that a populace that does not hate the oligarch is vulnerable to them. And the U.S. populace is pretty damn wishy-washy. We need to sober up in that regard. Toot sweet.
Integral, effectively information supply line for Ukrainian military forces, an irreplaceable asset for them. And that's bad in one sense, we now know, because the United States as a government effectively can't make a decision as to how that resource should be deployed to help or hurt our ally in that conflict. It's instead being made by a business, which is purportedly an American business, but not behaving in a way that is consistent with America's stated interests. What are the responsibilities of the American government toward American businesses that are messing with American foreign policy?
You know, we do two things working with American companies overseas. We support American companies in their efforts to work overseas, but we also establish certain parameters for how American companies operate. This is a situation that I can't comment on specifically. I don't know any of the details of this, but I do expect that.
How doesn't this sound like something to you? To me, this sounds a hell of a lot like when a Republican didn't read the tweet. I can't comment on it because I didn't read it. This sounds a hell of a lot like when a politician doesn't want to talk about something that they're supposed to talk about. Well, I can't really say because I don't really know. Well, what the hell did you agree to do the interview for? She can say. She does know. The answers will not please you. That's why she doesn't say. She cannot please you and her bosses at the same time. She cannot please you and keep the ultra comfortable just as comfy. If she so much as makes them get kind of a little tickle of guilt in the back of their brain, she might be fired next week. That's the system we live in. You know, maybe personally, she's a good woman. Maybe in fact, I would say through her actions, not personally, but through her actual career, she's done a lot of good. She has been a overall benefit in the jobs she's held. But make no mistake, she's giving the answers she's giving because she knows that you all will not like the truth. So she's choosing not to answer those questions which you won't like the answer for. And you are free to assume the worst then. She had an opportunity. That's the point of shows like this. She had an opportunity to give an answer. She chose not to. And because she is the expert, you may assume the worst. And if your assumptions turn out to be wrong, fine. Let somebody else come out and explain why that is. But the onus is not on us to wait forever and ever and ever and ever for our leaders to act like decent human beings. We don't have to sacrifice the rest of our lives and all of our children's lives on the hope that our grandchildren might live in the America that was promised. No, we can demand it right goddamn now.
President Zelensky will raise it, and it will be brought to the attention of others to address.
I knew you were going to avoid answering me on that question.
Because she serves the oligarchy.
I knew. Yeah. I could tell you before I asked it, because I know that you can't answer it in the specific. But I find it to be a confounding situation, just as an observer and as an American.
That little nod at the end broke my heart. First of all, Rachel, you look how I feel. You look how I feel.
Confounding situation, just as an observer.
That nod broke my heart.
Just as an observer and as an American.
She knows. She doesn't like it, but she is going to play the game. Don't be too harsh on her in particular, on that guest in particular. But understand that she is still the red right hand of a system that we need to address. Frankly, we don't need to get rid of the messengers, but we do need to change the message they are being given. So just understand what you're seeing.
Another situation that is confounding and concerning is one that the Biden administration has expressed very sharp concern about, which is a new law in Uganda, which is being called the Kill the Gays law, which establishes, in fact, the death penalty for something they call aggravated homosexuality. They've already started to arrest people under this law. They're threatening to kill people just for being gay. The Biden administration has been very sharply critical of this. The Obama administration was very sharply critical of this in 2013 and 2014 when the Ugandan government tried it the first time around. But there are a couple ways in which U.S. fingerprints are actually on this horrific policy. One is that American right-wing evangelical activists have encouraged the Ugandan government to do this. The other is that U.S. funds make up a significant portion of the Ugandan government's operating expenses, specifically the massive assistance we give them through the PEPFAR program to contradict the effects of HIV and AIDS in that country.
Before we get to the PEPFAR program, those evangelical activists that encourage this in Uganda, you know, some things we need to stand up and demand that our leaders deal with. And other things we need to take responsibility entirely for ourselves with. If you know anyone at all who listens to these people, who gives money to this filth, it needs to be the top priority in your life to get that person to stop. Now, if you need to explain to them, literally as we did on this stream, what death is, then do so. Because they're advocating for people's deaths. They're supporting someone who advocates for people's deaths. If you need to literally say, wait a minute, do you understand what you've just said? Truly, do you know what the end is? Because I'll explain it. If you never had that moment growing up, I'll explain it. Why are they advocating for this, that, or the other thing? Because they irrationally can't stand the kind of way certain people like to jizz them. Just think about how insane that is for a moment. The body type someone's attracted to. And this is what they advocate for? You can't let that go. You can't let them go through their lives thinking that they aren't supporters of the worst evil humanity is capable of. They are. And that must change. So, if you know somebody that is a supporter of one of these evangelicals that went to Uganda and said, you really should have the death penalty for homosexuality. If you have somebody who goes to an evangelical Baptist church and you know their church leader is out there saying, oh, the gays got to go, you need to have an intervention with them. And even if in your own mind you think they'll never listen to me, it doesn't matter. You have an obligation. You have to try over and over again. If you're worried that it'll ruin your relationship with them, oh well. You cannot have people out there supporting this behavior. I would certainly hope, and my suspicion is that in reality, it won't ruin your relationship. You have these conversations literally and frankly. You're not attacking them, but you are demanding. There is a bare minimum amount of decency. We can disagree on a whole lot. You cannot advocate for the genocide of another group of people. You just cannot. And still be expected to be treated like you are a decent human being, because you're not. You can become one in an instant. In one instant. You stop supporting the genocide of a group of people, welcome to the good guys. It's that simple. But until you do that, you're not a good guy. You can't get the credit. You can't get the respect. You cannot get the kindness. No, sir. No, ma'am. It is an act of love to not allow them to continue down that path. It is an act of caring for them. Save their soul, because they need Jesus or whatever the secular equivalent is.
PEPFAR is, of course, a very successful program. And I think all sort of righteous people want to defend it in terms of how many lives it saved around the world. But I keep hearing
25 million.
It's an astonishingly effective American program, perhaps one of the most life-saving American interventions in the world ever. And I keep hearing from activists.
I shouldn't laugh about this, but I'm unable not to bring this up. Does anybody remember Jiminy Glick? Side note, do you remember Jiminy Glick? Listen to how she says it's an astonishingly effective American program.
It's an astonishingly effective American program.
Doesn't that just sound like Jiminy Glick? Just a little bit there. All right, but now let's talk about this deeply sad thing.
And perhaps one of the most life-saving American interventions in the world ever. And I keep hearing from activists who are trying to keep the gay community from being killed off by their government in Uganda that PEPFAR funds are specifically being routed through the Ugandan government in a way that empowers and rewards the ministries and the individual ministers who are most responsible in Uganda for that policy. And given how strongly the administration feels about this, isn't there a way that that funding could be directed so that it's still solving the problem in Uganda, but it is not making the problem worse for that sexual minority that is facing really, really serious risk?
You know, I was asked this question by Lawrence O'Donnell when I was on his show the last time after you spoke to him. Mm-hmm. And let me just start out by saying that this law is horrific. And we've made very clear in no uncertain terms to the Ugandan government that it is unacceptable. And we are doing everything in our power to support the LGBTQ community in Uganda to ensure their safety and to ensure that they are not damaged by this law. And we do know that at least one individual has recently been arrested and charged and is in the process of being tried.
I don't know enough to say whether we should pull that funding or not. I will say this. If the Ugandan government wants that funding, then it should be pulled until that law is repealed and that person is allowed their freedom again. That prisoner of the state, who is a prisoner solely because of their identity, we have to not play games with this. I would consider military intervention. I would consider pulling any and all aid. I don't know how I would actually come down on those things. As I say it, when we're talking real, like military intervention. I should first of all clarify. I don't mean sending in snipers or whatever, but like a blockade. Oh, nope, you're not leaving the country. You're not leaving the country. Ships with cargo full of jeans or whatever. Nope, turn around. Go back. You got a law to repeal. But even as I say that, yada yada, is that the kind of action we want to build the world, that blah blah blah? I just don't know. But what I do know is we don't have to support at all a country that behaves like this. And when we do, we tell all other countries around the world, hey, if you want to wet your beak with US money a little bit, these are among the things you're allowed to do. Accepting aid from the U.S. should also mean accepting a base level of decency. Not only because it dictates where our allies may stand, but it dictates where we currently stand, where our morality is. Are we a country that allows genocides from our allies? We used to be. I don't want to be. Now that said, this is world politics. This is a step above what I'm used to reporting on, which also means I don't have years and years of background to sniff out what is a facade and what is not. And Biden is calling, as they say there, for the repeal of the anti-gay law. I hope he's got a good plan, but my gut instinct when looking at this is to say any and all aid should be frozen already, not to be unfrozen until Uganda can effing get its act together.
Because it's a capital offense, is being held in prison awaiting trial.
And it is a capital
life-threatening
offense.
situation.
So we are looking at, and I said this before, how we can continue to provide the good support that PEPFAR provides directly to individuals to help save their lives without putting that funding through the Ugandan government or through individuals in the Ugandan government who are responsible for implementing this law. It's a huge dilemma. But we have to find a way to do that. And we have to find a way to hold those accountable who are basically violating the human rights of the LGBTQ community in Uganda. We engage with them on a regular basis. I was involved with this.
You know, it's heartbreaking to see Rachel Maddow laying it out like that, basically pleading with this person. She's trying, she was, again and again, she was saying, all right, this is what they said they will do. Now they've got someone in prison. Now they're trying him. If he's found guilty, you know what they're going to do to him? They're going to kill him. Just so you know. What do you say to that, guest? We are thinking about this. We are aware. We're apprised of the situation. We're ducking and juking. We have a whole folder on it, and we read through the folder, and we go, why are we so afraid? Drastic action is called for. Take it. Take drastic action. It can be simple, but it should be grand. You get no money. Not $1. Not this, not that, not the other thing. You get nothing. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5. 5 stones. If you don't have the 5 stones, you don't even get one for the cause. You just get nothing. 0 stones, 0 money. Go Gary Oldman on their asses, is what I'm saying. Pull out of any deal that we have with them. Our deal should be made with everybody under the assumption that the person we are dealing with is not engaged in a genocide. Now, I realize the money we give them is supposed to help people, keep other people alive. I am sorry. But I suspect that all we're doing when we do that, if we continue to prop up these leaders who will selectively kill their own population, is perpetuating that. Jade Dragon, by the way, I saw that you're going into lurk mode. I respect it, and I just wanted to say thank you very much. I appreciate the boost to the algorithm. We are going to keep things going here.